Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you so much to everyone in this room for joining us for this webinar. We're really happy to have you here. Before I introduce Sebastian and get the presentation started, I want to go over a few reminders, a couple housekeeping things. If you have any questions or comments throughout this webinar, please go ahead and use the chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen to type in any questions or comments that you have, and we'll make sure that those go public. Let us know where you're coming from. We really appreciate everyone that's able to come in here and have some of these great discussions. So thank you again. Um, and I want to remind everyone that this is being recorded, and we know that this information is important to a lot of people that are joining us. So we're going to make this available to people who registered for this webinar. And I think that's it. So without further ado, I want to introduce Sebastian Metz. Sebastian, why don't you get us started here?
Okay, thank you a lot. So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. We've seen on the list of people registered that we were going from India to Mexico, so it's quite a nice range of locations. So if it works, yes. So my name is Sebastian Metz. I'm part of the market development team in Europe. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the best seafood practices. So my talk will be organized as follows. First, we'll give you some background and overview of the Global Seafood Alliance. Then we'll dig into the program, looking at how the seafood processing standard has evolved recently. Then we will give you an update on the responsible fishing vessel standards, and we'll have time for question in the end. So yeah, as mentioned, and you may have seen, there's a little chat box. If you have any questions or comments, please use it. We have. I'm not the one who's going to look at it. Hopefully, there are a team that is going to read all that. So first, the Best Seafood Practice is a program that is run by the Global Seafood Alliance. So some of you may have known the organization under an old name, Global Aquaculture Alliance, and we transitioned towards Global Seafood Alliance a few years back when we embraced not only aquaculture but also wild catch programs. What are we doing? We are doing a lot of, we are having our latest publication, that is our Global Impact Report. It's the first edition. So there's a QR code here if you want to download it, but this will be available on the website, and you'll have the link in the presentation, and that will be distributed. So how does the Global Seafood Alliance work? We have three main pillars: advocacy, education, and assurances. Best seafood practices, as you can see, is the first item under assurances, and this is what we are going to talk about today. Historically, we were known for our program called Best Aquaculture Practices. So how are these two related? Well, we were quite successful in introducing our program from the whole supply chain on aquaculture. And a few years back, we started to look into the wild catch sector. So the first half of the graph is what Global Aquaculture Alliance used to do. And now both are basically what the Global Seafood Alliance is doing. And we're going to look into specifically the bottom line, which talks about vessels, fishery, and processing plant. All these certification, the three certification, constitute best seafood practice. So two of them are owned by GSA, so a vessel standard and a processing plant standard. And for the fishery, GSA realized that there's a lot of alternatives out there that are all benchmarked by GSSI. And basically, to be BSP certified, you would just need to have products from GSSI benchmarked eco-labeled fishery. So why BSP? Well, BSP, basically it's about wild catch. Wild seafood accounts for half of the world consumptions. So this is the reason why we've expanded our reach to that part of the seafood world. So BSP was founded by members of the seafood industry. It's a one-stop shop for the whole wild process, as you've seen on the previous graph. There are 4 pillars that are essentials to our program. It's environmental responsibility, social accountability, food safety, and part of animal welfare. One key aspect of our program is that there is no logo licensing fee to minimize financial impact on producers and consumers. So every stakeholder involved in the process, so a producer, a processor, a retailer, will be able to use the logo without any charge. Certification is not performed until all variants are cleared. So basically, we have a very strong model of a pass, no pass. If you have some elements of the certification program that are not validated, you cannot be certified. And it's not just us that say that. We're not the only ones saying that. It's a good program. It has been benchmarked by different international third-party organizations. So if we are going to look a bit more in detail, responsible fishery would be eco-labeled, and that would give you a lot of credentials on the environmental responsibility, but social responsibility and food safety will not be covered. So our programs are basically here to close gaps. So if you want to have certification and assurances on the social responsibility in vessels, that's the RFVS, and we have also some pillars on the environmental responsibility and food safety. And in terms of processing plants, we are covering the 3. We're covering environmental responsibility, social responsibility, and food safety. If you combine all that, and that's how you become BSP, basically you can have coverage of all these 3 categories throughout the entire supply chain. What is really important is that at the processing plant level, there's social accountability. This is for those who know the best aquaculture product practices. This is the same kind of requirements that we have. The seafood processing plant standard is following a lot of ILO conventions and include requirements on wages, on benefits, working hours, protective equipment, child labor, forced, bonded, indentured, trafficked, and prison labor, discrimination, freedom of association. And one key aspect of the certification program is that on-site workers have to be interviewed for a certification, for a certificate to be granted. It's part of the SPS auditing process, and it's something that is essential. And basically, if auditors cannot interview workers, no certificate can be delivered. So we talked about evolution, recent evolutions. We are currently developing the Seafood Processing Standard 6.0 with a new modular approach. So there's a fundamental core standard, basically the left of the diagram, with modular approach. We have a module for canned food, we have a module for effluent, we have a module for
That sounds like you're having some troubles. Ian, do you want to kind of take over for a minute while we can see if Sebastian can get his technical stuff worked out?
Sure. Let
Thank
me
you, Ian.
also.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, can I be heard, Sean?
Yeah, you sound great, Ian. Thanks.
Okay, so Sebastian was just explaining that we're in the process of evolving the seafood processing standard, which is currently in version 5.1. I think I'm right in saying, and we will be putting the new version through piloting and public comment in a normal fashion, which, as Sebastian was explaining, is going to take a different approach to how we have set up the standard in the past and the auditing, by moving to a modular approach. The idea is to try and introduce some audit efficiencies and save time where possible, by allowing flexibility on certain modules that are applicable to particular processing plants and facilities, and allow preparation ahead of the actual audit day. Also, in order to put the standard through the SSCI, Consumer Goods Forum social benchmarking, which has particular requirements on social auditors. We are making that a voluntary module, which can be requested either by the marketplace or by the processing plants themselves, which would then take the certification up to, once we've put the standard in this system through the SSCI benchmarking, to that level. And I do believe, Sebastian, your sound is back on.
Yes, my sound is back. Thank you very much, Ian. Sorry for that. So I think you've covered all what I wanted to say here. So the essential element about BSP, is that current supply chain certification, you need several audits to cover food safety, social accountability, environmental responsibility, sometimes animal welfare. With SPS, basically you can cover all of them in just one go. So it's helping you streamlining supply chain certification and basically overall reducing costs. We put a lot of emphasis on RFVS also, and we put a lot of emphasis on the social dimension of RFVS. Why? Basically because seafood is more susceptible to human rights abuses. You have some push factors, you have some pull factors, but overall, the key issue is that workers may be put in unsustainable situations that would qualify as forced labor as ILO has defined it. What can we do to improve human rights? Basically ensuring that sustainable seafood is not just about environmental impacts. It's also about protecting crew rights, welfare, and has to be done on vessels, but also throughout the whole supply chain. So for the rest of the supply chain, we're covering it with SPS. For the vessels, we're covering it with RFVS. Why is it important, even in Europe? Well, because we just took some snapshot of recent publications, newspapers in Europe, but there were reports of exploitation in UK, in Ireland. More recently, there was a case of a German flag vessel arrested by the Irish Coast Guard, and there were some legal issues that forbade the Irish Coast Guards to stop the vessel. All those problems were related to forced labor. So this is really something important, and in every fishing grounds in the world. So a little bit of background about the RFVS. For those of you who are familiar with the UK RFS, Responsible Fishing Scheme, the Responsible Fishing Scheme was developed by Seafish, which is a UK quasi-non-governmental organization. It's an agency that is well known in the UK, and they decided mid-2010s to transition their RFS to another organization. So in 2018, an MOU agreement was signed between Seafish and the Global Aquaculture Alliance at the time, which became Global Seafood Alliance, to globalize RFS, which was really UK-centric, which led us to launch the RFVS 1.0 in 2020. We launched it and started a pilot program. And by 2023, we are at version 2.1. And we are happy to report that we've achieved the SSCI benchmark late last year. That benchmark which shows that basically we're serious when we're saying that we're covering social responsibility. So the RFVS, basically that's enabling fishing operation to provide assurances of decent working conditions and operation best practices from catch to shore. One concerns usually expressed when we present the program is that it's only for large vessels or only for vessels in Europe. The program is available now on a global scale. There are size categories that allow the standards to be applicable on small-scale vessels and on large distant water fleets. You can have a single vessel entering the program. You can have fleet models entering the program. And it's all kind of fishing gears. Basically, we're blind towards fishing gears. We don't have an interest on how you operate as long as it's legal. I told that once, and people told me, "Oh, you can use dynamite." I said, "No, dynamite is illegal, so you can't have it." It's a program that is vessel-based, and it's, as I said, it's focusing on social responsibility and the certification of some vessel systems dimensions. So it's working according to two core principles. The first one is about vessel management and safety systems. One important aspect is that section 2 to 4 are covering environmental impact, catch traceability, and license to operate. So it's not just looking at what is core principle 2, which is the crew rights, safety, and well-being. So basically the social dimension. There's also an operation and environmental dimension, which is covered by core principle 1. We also have catch safety and food hygiene on board the fishing vessels, which is an important part of certification system, especially when we're talking about premium quality fish. All that is based on international treaties and conventions like the ILO 188 and the fundamental conventions on workers designed by ILO since the 1920s. Recent changes made. So there are two clauses that were changed in the last iteration. Clause 213. So the first one is about the fact that crew members or family members should be paid directly and not to a labor recruiter. When we discussed that with vessel companies that were interested in the program and vessel companies that were in the program, they gave us indications that sometimes there are it's not possible to pay directly crews. So we've added new language to clarify the difference between a labor provider and a labor recruiter, and to see how those two practices may be acceptable. There's a second one, which is a group of clauses about the recruitment of young workers. So specifically prohibiting the recruitment of crew under the age of 16. There are also issues associated with that clause, because the age of 16 is not a universal legal limit. There are some flag states where children under 16 may be allowed to be on board vessels, especially when the vessels are owned by their family. And but they can also be on board vessels because they are trained. If you take France, for example, you can start being trained on board of fishing vessels before 16 in specific circumstances. So basically, to take into account those particular situations, some clauses have been added and phrased to say that it's potentially possible to have crew under 16, but under very strict rules, with risk assessments and no interference with education. Sorry. So in terms of the whole model, again, the RFVS certification model is that you can have either a fleet or a single vessel. So there are different approaches on how you certify those two models, but the system is accounting for it. There are some compliance guides for both applicants and a more detailed one for auditors that are all available on our website. We have an auditor training program that is ongoing to ensure that the challenges of the role, and especially the SSCI requirements, are met. There are central management system requirements specific to a group or fleet applicants, and basically there are some documentation available on request if you are interested to pursue that. And we are looking at how a digital platform can be used to make some of the auditing for vessel more cost effective. This is currently in a trial period, because we have to test that basically the program can account for all situations. One key aspect of RFVS is that the RVS certification may seem close to or equivalent to legislation in some places. The idea is that depending on where the vessels are registered, we're basically in the preparation. We are going to account for CBs are going to account for national regulations and are going to look only into the additional RFVS requirements. Also, Global Seafood Alliance is not the only organization that is developing vessel standard programs. To be more cost effective, we are in the process to recognize other vessel standard programs and see what are the equivalence level. So basically, if a part of our RFVS certification is covered by another vessel standard program and the vessels are certified, the CBs will only look into the additional RFVS requirements. Overall, the idea is that the aim of this way of functioning is to lower cost of auditing, to be the most cost efficient possible. Currently, in terms of partners, we have several big names that are recognizing or asking for RFVS, with notably 3 UK retailers, Tesco, Waitrose, and M&S. We also have some important producers that are integrated in the program. In very recent news, so as I said earlier, the RFVS is the first scheme to achieve SSCI at sea operation benchmark. So that happened late last year. I forgot to check, but I think it's October or November. And we have some big companies that have started to be fully certified to BSP. So Vega Salmon is the first in Europe to be certified to BSP. But also we have Associate Seafood, which is the first in the UK to be certified to best seafood practices. We are expecting to have more and more big names in the program. But as I said earlier, we're really starting it, so it's a journey. Part of the journey, we also are in discussion with a lot of NGOs, notably WWF in the UK. The WWF has published their basket blueprint for action. And in this basket blueprint for action, they've stated RFVS 3 times. They've asked that supply chains commit to and implement PAS 1550 responsible fishing vessel schemes throughout the supply chain. PAS 1550 is also stated 2 times, and we've done a benchmark a few years back, and best seafood practices cover 87 in full or part of PAS 5050. PAS 5050, which is a key requirement for some large retailers, and we believe that our close alignment will help the processors and supply chains to streamline their PAS 5050 preparation. Basically, the table you have here is showing you how we meet the PAS 5050 requirements. This has been independently verified by the PAS 5050 team, Pew, EGF, and WWF. This is, for us, this is an important part. We are discussing regularly with all these stakeholders, just to be sure to remain aligned and to evolve in the same global direction. We may have our little differences, but overall, we aim to improve how the supply chain operates in the same manner. And now, I think, this is the time for you to ask us some questions. So I'm going to reopen my screen.
I'm going to move over to the question and answer section. I really encourage anyone that has any questions or comments to put that into the chat box now. Now is your opportunity to ask these. And I want to start with, we only have one so far. Sebastian, if anybody wants to jump in this. And I'm also going to we also have a couple other GSA employees here that can help answer any questions that you may have. So,
are you able to link certified vessels with certified processing plants? So I'm going to interpret the link. There are 2 ways for me. Sorry, that's my French brain thinking. Linking for me, there's 2 ways. Either introduce people. So the second one is having chain of custody. Because BSP is in 3 parts. We have the fishery part that is GSSI recognized. This part has a chain of custody that is attached. So we are not replicating chain of custody. The fishery already has a chain of custody. And in that chain of custody, processors, so processing plants, know where the fish has been sourced from, and so which vessels they receive the fish from. So through that certification, they can link certified vessel with processing plants. What does an RFS assessment look like for a vessel? What does an RFVS assessment look like for a vessel?
So, Sebastian, before we go on to that next question, I think, David, did you want to add on to that at all, or do we want to go on to the next one?
No, I think Sebastian had it covered there. Yeah, we are absolutely able to link certified vessels to processing plants through the SPS audit process, as Sebastian mentioned earlier in the webinar. To apply, a consumer-facing BSP logo to that, it does need to additionally link back to that GSSI benchmarked fishery. However, the intention is certainly to be able to link all 3 steps in the BSP supply chain together through the processing facility. And I'm happy to start off on the next question too, as well, if you'd like. For an RFVS assessment, as we mentioned, we do have a system set up for either an individual or a group of vessels to be audited and certified. So from a single vessel perspective, it's a relatively straightforward process of completing an application with GSA, filling out some general information, signing a short self-declaration, and then working with a certification body to schedule what is, for a single vessel, a single day audit. So we do require a vessel to be at port for 1 day to have an on-site audit where the auditor will come and do, really 3 main components, which are 1, document review of the management policies and procedures of the vessel, a sort of site tour of the vessel that the auditor takes themselves to look at all sorts of safety risks, making sure all of the operating setups on the vessel are compliant. And lastly is interviews with both crew and management to go over a lot of the social aspects. So all of those will occur in the same day. The auditor will potentially, if there are any nonconformities, issue those, and the vessel will work with the certification body to close out their nonconformances and achieve a 3-year certificate to the RFVS standard.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. If anybody has any other questions, now is the time to put it in there. But if not, I guess we can go ahead and wrap this up. If anybody does come up with any questions that they have later on, and you want to reach out, please reach out. Sebastian, do you have your information here at the end?
No, we have no, yeah. Maybe we can add that to the pack we are going to circulate.
Yeah, so we're gonna, as we said before, we are going to send this recording out to all of the people who registered for this webinar and everybody that attended. So if you do think of questions later, please send them in to Sebastian or anybody else any other contacts you have here at GSA, and we'll be happy to connect you with the correct person to make sure that we get all your questions answered. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, and please make sure that you register and attend our future webinars because we do them. We're starting to do them more frequently, so make sure you check those out. Thank you so much. I'm going to let everybody go enjoy the rest of their day, and we'll talk to you soon.